Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Welcome
Thank you
inside
for
the
having
studio
us.
and online.
Let me start with you, Mr. Mohammed, and just, given Nigeria's current debt profile, how sustainable is the government's strategy of securing additional loans for developmental projects?
I think as it stands now, when you look at that debt profile about 34 point something billion dollars, and then you look at our reserve at 23, our real reserve at 23 point something billion, so we are already way off, so we are in negative. But again, when you look at events unfolding during the week, especially the coming down of oil price to about $68 per barrel, you can't just but think that Nigeria might have to do a lot of borrowing. The CBN have tried to intervene recently, on Friday, by injecting FX liquidity into the system. We must also ask ourselves, why are we so passionate about borrowing? As it stands now, we are passionate in two ways. Want to improve the life of our citizens, and then secondly, want to improve FX liquidity in the system to bring stability to our exchange rate. So when you look at these two very important keys in economic development, you can't just but help that this might not just be the end of our borrowing, especially with economics happenings around the world at the moment. Though it's challenging, but when you look at our borrowing, ordinarily we should be excited about it because it's borrowing that should turn around the economy. But we've not been seeing that because of maybe the government is not telling us what they are really doing with some of them. They say power, you've not seen improvement in power. They talk about nutrition. You've not seen those nutritional value in terms of food in the hands of the average Nigeria eating 3 square meal. When they talk also about improving basic education, our educational system is still backward. We are not seeing any improvement in basic education. We are still seeing a lot of children out of school. When they talk about stimulus, I think cash transfer or economic stimulus to the less vulnerable, we seem to be enjoying a lot of corruption depending on which party is in power, depending on which party you belong to, then you enjoy those stimulus. So those are the challenges. Ordinarily, you could see effects of some of this borrowing in the lives of ordinary Nigerians, but we are not seeing that effect because maybe we don't have the structure to deal with some of these policies that we try to implement through borrowing.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Muktar. Let me come into the studio here with Abiodun, who's here with us. First of all, a light question. Does it seem like Nigeria is being enabled? Does it seem like, we go cap in hand looking for loans, but we still get it even with the situation we find ourselves? Why is that? Is there something they're seeing in the Nigerian space that perhaps is encouraging them to borrow or loan Nigeria these monies?
Okay, as a simple question, simple answer to that would be that Nigeria has kind of postured itself to be doing the right things. By the last 2 years, the reforms this administration has carried out.
Good.
Taking out fuel subsidy, devaluing the naira. So those are like postures to international organizations.
I like that answer, and I'm going to ask another one. So President Tinubu is doing good then?
It's posturing, doesn't mean it's doing good.
Well, hang on a second, but posturing, yes, fine. But then inflation's dropping. The subsidy has been taken out. So these are good attempts. These are good things. So yes. Judith, he is doing good at the end of the day. Let's give him his accolades where it is worth it.
Yes.
Accolades where it is worth it.
Judith, where are you going with
That's
this?
That's what you said now. I said it now.
She repeated what I said.
Yes.
In any case, what are the long-term effects, however, if we keep borrowing? What's going to happen down the line where we are looking at our situation? It's bad, but we still need to borrow.
So first things first, borrowing in itself is not bad. It's how you utilize the borrowed funds.
Okay.
So as Dr. Muktar stated too, we have a wrong borrowing approach. We're utilizing borrowing and we're not seeing the real effect of this borrowing. And so long term, when there's a pattern of borrowing and then the Nigerians, citizens are not seeing impact of that, it tends to weaken investors' confidence to come in and deploy their funds in the long run. Also, we're also on the part of fiscal unsustainability, looking at numbers. So currently, debt servicing to revenue ratio is above 90%. And we're just even servicing these loans. We're not having the returns to even repay them. We're just paying the interest on them. Also, if you consider a ratio like our debt to GDP ratio, over about 51% right now, these are not really good numbers. So long-term impact is that we tend to deter the investors we're trying to push to attract.
I want Mr. Mohammed Muktar to answer that if Nigeria is doing good or not. Your take on that question I asked initially. Is the president himself doing good with this posturing that Abiodun says he's doing? Muktar?
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. It depends on what you're looking at. Is the president really doing good? It is borrowing. Like I said, results are not showing that we are doing well with our borrowing because power have not improved, household nutrition have not improved, basic education has not improved. The only place that you could say that the president have done well in his borrowing, then you could say infrastructure. We are seeing, especially road network, railway infrastructure, we are seeing a lot of activities in those spaces. We are seeing a lot of new infrastructures coming up in those places. That is where you can say the borrowing is doing very well. And some of these, if you think in terms of infrastructure, some of those projects have a means of paying off if we are well managed, especially if it's a PPP type of project, like what we are seeing in the Calabar Coastal Road. We heard the minister saying they could be torn as early as December. And so some of the projects have a means of generating. When you talk about power have a snowball effect, improving business climate, improving productivity. So all these are things we can look at. When we talk about power, even when you borrow for power, you don't see those immediate results because it's not something like you just buy like a telecom mast. We are comparing them with the telecom sector. We just put the mast and have good calls. There's a lot of fabrication. There's a lot of issue. There's a lot of gas. You need to look at gas, look at placement. So those ones will take time. But the one that we actually wanted to see immediate result is in the lives of the ordinary Nigerian, like basic education should have improved by now. And also we should have seen improvement in the area of the life of the ordinary Nigerian, especially with this stimulus in terms of intervention, either direct intervention to cash transfer and all that. We should have seen some improvement. So those are the areas that we think that this borrowing has not really done well. But when you look at the overall pressure, if you score in these three areas, if you score 2/3, I think you've done well. But again, the one that you're not doing well is the one that really affects those in the bottom. And so that means you need to add up the network work. So your 2/3 should have given you about 90%. But because you're not doing, just like when you set up an examination question, some questions will carry 10 marks, some will carry 2 marks, and some will carry 15 marks. So if you look at it, 10 marks, maybe the president have done well, 2 marks, the president have done well. But in the area of 15 marks, then you feel it. So you could be saying that you've not done very, very well.
You're reminding me of JAM.
And the trick to winning those such examinations is always to go for the questions with the highest marks, so you can win, so you can at least score, get a pass mark.
True.
But anyway, let's look at something, right? Muktar, I have to ask you: does the depreciation of the naira influence the real value of Nigeria's external debt? I know that last year they did come out to say that they were doing well in terms of debt servicing, and that the overall the share size of it sort of shrunk. But analysts like yourself had said it could be when it comes to the depreciation of the naira. Has it done anything in sort of mitigating the external debt that we owe?
Well, when you look at that, yes, it does. But again, you should give credit to the CBN over the weekend. They told us, during the week, I don't think it's over the week, during the week, they were celebrating the 23 billion reserve that I normally call it the real reserve that we have compared to the 41 billion that is there. When you come from a low of 3.8, you go to a low of 14, then you're 923, then it calls for celebration, and that means forward payment. We can do that for the next 6 months. And so that's one area that sometimes you look at government, look at those areas and say, you know what, if we can do 6 months forward payment, we can also borrow more. So I think that when looking at those areas, you said, okay, if I started my life in 2022 and I had just $3.9 billion, and in 2025, at the beginning of 2025, or well, I say 2024 because you're talking about the year end, and I have 23 point something billion. That's a remarkable improvement, and I've been able to service some of my debt. Be it maybe those debts some of those debts are not yet being serviced. That's another thing. Some of these debts we start servicing this debt maybe 10 years from now. So it might not be this administration that will really bear the brunt of some of these debts. It might be the incoming administration or future generation that are paying off some of these debts. So that is why it seems better for them. But there's a lot of challenge, like we say, crude oil production is still low. Now we are having crude oil price being low, come at the same time. So it's going to be a very challenging period for Nigeria going forward. But like my colleague in the studio say, when you look at those reforms could be a game changer if they are implemented with all sincerity of purpose and direction. If that is done, then you could see what happened sometime in 2008 when the world economy was in turmoil, but Nigeria was able to go out of it because of a very healthy reserve. Even if this reserve is not healthy, maybe the reform will cover up for the unhealthy nature of the reserve. But these reforms are driven without, some people will say without human face, some people will say without adding value to the economy yet, even if it has been going on for 2 years. But what I normally ask ourselves, this is a surgery that we should have conducted maybe 15, 20 years ago. If you're a human being and you're supposed to have a surgery 10 years ago and you delay that surgery and you do it 15 years later, the pain is much because at that time your body system is not like it was 15 years ago. I think we are feeling this pain because we've not put ourselves in a stage to conduct this surgery even when we should have done it. But now we are doing it. It's very painful, but as it stands now, there's no going back on that. That's just the way forward. Any attempt to go back on that, we'll see that it could be catastrophic for the Nigerian economy.
All right, let me come to the studio here and ask Abiodun as well. Considering the sectors that are targeted for this loan, we have education, power, women's empowerment. Is it necessary? I mean, women's empowerment is necessary, but would it be utilized? Can we ensure that there's sort of transparency and accountability with these funds being channeled for its economic benefits?
So you already said the keywords, transparency and accountability, and that's one thing the Nigerian government over the years has lacked in. So because we don't have transparency and accountability, we doubt the utilization of these funds when it comes to sectors like education, women empowerment, and the likes. So what we need to do better going forward is to ensure that when we utilize these funds, there's more transparency in it, and we are able to like measure the impact this has on the subject itself. So it just boils down to political will. We need to exercise that political will to ensure that there's transparency in how these funds are deployed, and then we can track the measurable progress and on the impact of the people that it gets to.
All right. Let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, we ask the important questions, which is, of course, the lessons that can be learned here and what is at stake when it comes to food crisis and debt crisis that we face in Nigeria. Just after the break, stay with us. And you're welcome back. Earlier, we're talking about debt servicing as Nigeria is gearing up for another loan, or rather, it owes the World Bank $38.88 billion, and it is now, the federal government has now secured an additional $1.95 billion in loans from the World Bank. And these are now going to be channeled for women's empowerment, education, and power. And this move has sparked quite a lot of reaction, plus debate in all quarters, as critics have said this is not necessary at this time. My guest today is Mr. Muktar Mohammed. He joins me live via video chat, and also here in the studio is, of course, Mr. Ayotunde Abiodun. He's an analyst of SBM Intelligence. And we both have been going through all of the stats and just talking about the benefits of this and whether or not Nigeria is ready for yet another loan. Now, before the break, I was talking about accountability and transparency in implementing this yet another loan from the World Bank that is supposed to be shared across, women's empowerment, education, and power. But I have to ask you, Mr. Muktar Mohammed, right? I mean, when you think about the loans that we're taking, or better yet, the renewed agenda initiative that is being run by the president's wife, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, the First Lady of Nigeria, the president's wife, the First Lady of Nigeria. She's done that, and I don't have the figures yet, but huge numbers have gone to the renewed agenda initiative. Same for all the senators under the APC umbrella. Is there not enough empowerment initiatives that's going on? Do we need more loans? 1.9, almost $2 billion loan for the World Bank to pump into more women empowerment initiatives?
Well, if you look at empowerment in any economy, it's largely driven by the private sector because of businesses have foundations that drive empowerment. Necessarily, government is supposed to create the enabling environment and intervenes in some of those empowerment. when they think that some sectors, maybe some peoples or some sectors are not being empowered very well. But when you look at some of the empowerment you just talked about from the office of the first lady, empowerment from the office of the first son of the president, it's just an office like that, and empowerment also, and also empowerment from the senators, members of the House of Representatives. It's very disjointed here. So you cannot even get a figure of it to combine it with that what the government is doing. But in a civilized society, you could look at private sector development, how much the private sector, how much individuals, how much foundation have been able to impact in the economy. Then you see how much government also impacted in the economy. So because of this disjointed nature, sometimes government is almost doing the same thing like what those the private citizens are doing in their own capacity. So you don't seem to see results in them. I think that's the disjointed nature of some of this intervention, especially in the area of food. Intervention in families, and also intervention in the area of women development. You're just looking at, we have not talked about the office of the first ladies of the states, how they also are doing empowerment in one form or the other. But because this empowerment are not driven with purpose in terms of meeting specific need of the people, they are mostly driven by political agenda. You don't seem to get those results until you begin to empower your people based on the needs of the people, not based on your political need or political constituency of what you want to achieve politically. Then those results will not come in. Because, I mean, if a certain community is not politically inclined to you, despite their productivity, you will not want to empower them because you feel that you're empowering your enemy to take you out of power. So I think that's the major challenge that we have. But for the government intervention, I think it's just between the private sector and the government is disjointed.
It begs to ask whether or not this empowerment or this loan that is going to be driven into women's empowerment is not even going to still be politicized, giving Nigeria's political terrain. But let me ask you, Mr. Abiodun, in context of global economic trends, right? How does Nigeria's debt situation compare to other emerging, economies? Particularly the fact that Nigeria needs to find a way to balance the need for infrastructural development with the imperative of maintaining a manageable debt profile.
So currently our debt situation is fairly decent. We're not yet at the point of a default, just like Ghana did 2 years ago, 2022. But we need to crucially manage our debt at this point. It's very important for us to prioritize how to change our borrowing approach. And we've been taking on a lot of borrowing. I think first, fundamentally, Nigerians have a very bad history when it comes to word borrowing. An average Nigerian is not comfortable with the fact that the Nigerian government is borrowing. Well, first thing is this, borrowing in itself is not bad. We have more advanced economics take on even more loans than we do. But the difference in how they utilize this borrowing to service the needs of their people and drive economic development. So first, we need to change our approach to how we utilize borrowed funds. And then we must prioritize transparency and accountability and utilize these funds to generate economic returns so we can meet our repayment obligations. So basically, we just need to change our borrowing strategy.
All right. I mean, gentlemen, I must say thank you. Just a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer. It begs to ask the question about our internally generated revenue, our IGR, and whether or not we are producing enough to be getting yet another burden. Just a food for thought for us to go home with. Mr. Muktar Mohammed, CEO of Finance with Muktar, I want to say thank you, and also to you, Ayotunde Abiodun, analyst with SBM Intelligence. Thanks once again for joining us, gentlemen, to give us a bit of insight on our debt profile. Thank you.